Hello, this is Malorian, and this is the Orc Tactical Team. And what I'm going to talk about today is Dwarves and 8th. So I kind of talked about this before when I was talking about how you take on Dwarf tournament builds with Orcs, but I had a request just to talk about Dwarves in general and 8th and how they're doing and what are some tricks you can do. So the main thing about Dwarves and 8th is they're actually doing fairly well. Some of the reasons for this is that they have amazing infantry. And the reason why their infantry is amazing is because they have so many great weapon troops that are at a good price. So when it comes to 8th, the way they're going to win combats is that you need to kill things. You know, you can be steadfast and bog things down, but you're not going to win through being steadfast. You're not going to win through combat res. You're going to win through killing things. And so the more offensive you are, the better. And for the most part, that's what you have all the way across the dwarf army. You know, you got your warriors that can take great weapons. You got your longbeards that can take great weapons. You got your miners that can take great weapons. Hammerers. You have your slayers. You know, just all these guys. You can rangers if you wanted. Just all these guys that just hit so hard. And I mean, you can just take big blocks of these and off you go. It's just fantastic. One of the negatives that you see about dwarves, though, that counterbalances this is magic. So to begin with, they're actually not too bad with magic because, like Empire, they can get as many dispel dice as they want because they still have the old thing where if you have a rune priest or a rune lord, you're getting these extra dispel dice. And so really, I mean, if you're playing a big game, let's say you're theoretically a 10,000 point game against dwarves, don't even take magic because they're going to have 12 dice every single time, and they'll have umpteen number of little runes that stop or destroy your magic spell, so don't even bother. However, when you bring this down to a more 2,500 point level, the main thing that they're going to be suffering from is that they actually just don't have any magic. So whereas their infantry is going to be really great, if they run up against something that has a bunch of buffs, like, you know, Lore Life, making the opponent being +4 toughness, or the debuffs, you know, all of a sudden they have their toughness brought down by the Dark Elves and they're shot to hell, you know, they can really struggle in those situations. So they actually really need that magic defense to try and balance this. And so what you'll really see in these dwarf armies, and the way to go is just take big blocks, you're going to have great weapons, and then just something that's going to really give you massive amounts of magic defense, and then go get them. So breaking this down for what some of the things you should take if you're a dwarf player, you might have all these shooting units, like all these thunderers and quarrelers, and sure, they're great because, you know, more of them can shoot, but I wouldn't even really bother with them. And the reason for this is that, like I've said before for, say, Empire, is that they're going to be getting to combat faster, so you're going to get fewer times to shoot, and they're really, the footprint, even though it gets smaller, it's still getting in the way. I mean, your other blocks, your combat blocks, are now going to be going to Horde, or you should be going to Horde, and so your shooting units, you want to be as compact as possible. And so one of the best things for this is War Machine. So instead of taking little blocks of 10 Thunderers, 10 whatever, don't do that. Take your Organ Guns, take your Grudge Throwers. Grudge Throwers are amazing. You know, you have these things where, sure, Stone Throwers got decreased in strength, so they won't be doing as much damage, they don't ignore armor, but you can be boosting it with runes to be making it strength 5 and re-rolling the scatter and all these great things. And, you know, those you can have set behind your line. You don't even need to care. Your Organ Gun can be sitting behind your line. Remember, with true line of sight, you just need to see one little path through those warriors, and sure, you'll be -2 to hit, but Organ Guns hit automatically anyway. So your entire front line can be all these big blocks of combat. Your War Machines are safely behind your lines, meaning that your opponent's going to have to come all the way around, and you can just run up and smash them. Some of the things to really think about with these combat troops is make sure that you're going to be... There's a lot of ways you can get those great weapons, but not all of them are the best, and you really have to think of what you're doing. I mean, sure, Slayers can take great weapons, but they still have no armor. They're maxed out at 30, so they're not going to really turn into the power horde that you need. They're going to drop fast. If you're looking at Longbeards, well, panic doesn't really matter anymore, so it doesn't really matter. They're ignoring that and letting other people re-roll, and so you know, it's nice that they're a core, but you can just take a lot of, you know, warriors with great weapons, and that takes up everything. If you go to some of your more elites, you know, hammers, again, might be great because you're stubborn now, right? So that you can go to horde, smash things down, but at least then if you get hit with a one-time big smash, you know you're not going to be breaking or shouldn't break because you're stubborn. So make sure you're looking at getting what you want. I think miners are great for dwarves, especially, as always, if you take the anvil. And getting to that, before I was always a big pusher of if you had to choose either the Rune Lord or the Dwarf Lord, I like the Dwarf Lord because if they ever got into combat, you needed something to smash down the big monsters or smash down the big characters. Well, now in 8th, that's not really needed because you have these big great weapons. It's not, oh no, I have, let's say a giant that's in now combat with my shield warriors. I'm screwed. I'll never be able to do enough wounds. Well, now with all these great weapons, that giant's going to be dead in no time. So you don't really need that Dwarf Lord anymore. You'll be only dropping from Leadership 10 to Leadership 9. And with the reroll from the BSB for everything, who cares? So a Dwarf Lord is something that you might take for fun, or if you're against a person that takes a really strong combat character that you need to make sure that you kill, or you make a really defensive Dwarf Lord to shut him down. But otherwise, I won't even bother. Which means that now it's going to be with the Anvil. So with the Anvil, you're going to have a Rune Lord, 2 Dispel Dice, an Anvil, you're now up to 3, and now you can load them up with, the Rune of Balance to be stealing your dice, you can be giving them the Rune of Spell Breaking, all this stuff. So it really makes you do what I said, where you're going to be shutting down your opponent's magic phase, and then at the same time, that be able to get that extra movement. I mean, you got a horde of miners comes on, and then you can use the Anvil to throw them into a flank. I mean, you just pick a unit to destroy. It's amazing. If you're trying to rush into the watchtower or trying to rush over to block things, fantastic, right? Another thing with the miners, if you're playing Blood and Glory and they're running a bunker, well, miners come from behind them, anvil into the rear of the bunker, done. You win the game. So very tactical, big significance there. Great thing to take. And really that's all dwarves come down to now. Just a whole bunch of combat troops with great weapons, support war machines, and then some the anvil support in the back, which in a way could be very boring, but there are little tricks you could also be mixing in to make things interesting. One thing you can do is, how about this? You take a unit of rangers, and so you have them, so they're scouting up there. Then you can have your one BSB banner that lets them move up again, and then you're pretty much guaranteed the charge. Now there is a little gray area there about whether what overrides what, because it says in the main rule book that a unit that scouts can't charge on the first turn, but then in general army books overrule rule books, and it says that with the anvil that's allowed to be a charge. So there's a little bit of debate about whether you could be doing that. Same thing goes for rangers, right? Rangers used to be kind of silly, but now they could be not too bad. Give them great weapons, anvil them to a side. You can be devastating a block right away. So there are ways you can make the army interesting, but really when it comes down to it, dwarves are just an elite, killy army with great weapons that are going to smash everything. So there you have it.